Hey everyone, Tim Higgins here. So I'm going to do a collection of videos. This is mainly for my friend Todd Hall, but I figured it'd be a good set of videos to share with everyone. What I'm going to do is give an introduction to the portal of TDM. So first thing we can do is log in. Now, if you get that thing says not secured, just say continue. It's fine, unless you have certificates. I'm not going to give details on this. Hopefully, it's just enough to get you all started. So once we log in, what you're looking at is the portal, which is the preferred way that CA, which is now Broadcom, prefers you to use TDM. So this wouldn't be your first screen. I apologize about that. Your first screen may be something like this. Okay. Now, we're giving this probably has great information here, but we're going to kind of fly through most of this information and where you should start. So the very first thing you should do is go to configurations. Make sure you have a profile. Now I'm going to be using a previous profile, which is my bike shop target, which really is just a connection to a database that has a subset of tables based off the AdventureWorks database. So if you any of you all are Windows fans, you know about the AdventureWorks database. So we're going to kind of use the people and the product table from that. Now with the profile, basically, it really is just a connection string in essence. So let's just go ahead and cancel that before I screw something up. Now, hold on. There we go. Okay, so I made it my source and my target. So if you've ever used TDM GT Data Maker in the past, you could have a source and a target. So in this case, I'm going to make both of them the same. And let's just see what it looks like if I create a new profile. So new. I don't have to have a description. I can leave a SQL. There's many different things you can pick down here. Oracle to, MySQL. I think I saw that. Postgres, which is here, and a DB2, which is really cool. So you can also connect to a mainframe. If I leave it as a SQL, let's know the server. We'll give it some fake address. Truth is, I probably could just do localhost, even though I don't have a database installed. Port is 1433. Instance name would be delete table, just because I don't have anything there, right? And then if I go down, I can specify other things as well. And then I can, username and password, SA. Most of my passwords are the same. As far as databases go, that would be what it normally would be. And then I could create a group to share this profile with. Now that's very important, and we'll get to users in a little while, but if I have a set of groups that I don't want to be able to see this profile or access this database, then I would just make sure they're not in this group, okay? Because then I can just click on it and get a collection of groups that I already have created, all right? So that's fine. So that's how you create a profile. It's really that simple. Then you test it, test connection, and save. So I'm just going to hop out of this because I removed my database, but we're going to be using my database in the cloud. Okay, fair enough. Now, what I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to create a new project. Okay, why don't we keep us a running tally here? If I just say notepad. So first thing is a profile, right? Second thing is a project. All right, so what I'm going to do is a new project. I'm going to say create new, and we'll call it demo for Todd. How's that? We need a version. Okay, fair enough. I don't need a description of my version because I only have one. So basically, if I create a new version, that's what this is saying. I was just reading to make sure. Then you can inherit the tables from it as well. So let's go ahead and save. Now I created my project. We're good. So if I go down and look, I should have a project called Demo for Todd, and I have a version, which is great. I can modify the versions. I can add new versions. I can do whatever I want to. But now what we're going to do, sometimes it didn't show up right away. So you want to hit refresh, and then I can go to my project. And there's our project for Todd. Now, the first thing I want to do in my project is, remember the left-hand side, we're going to start from the top. I want to look at my modeling, and I want to go to my environments. Now, environments is your group or domain. So in this case, we may have a developer's environment, right? An environment for developing code. Okay, and I may have one for QA, I may have one for pre-prod, integration, whatever. But the cool thing is I can have more than one data source. So in this case, and I only have bike shops here, but let's just say for kicks and giggles. Now, I have a completely different data source for orders, which is if you ever, okay. So if you ever used the examples for TDM, you know that orders is one of the tables that it has. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now we have two profiles in there, which is really cool. So I could have a profile from MySQL. I could have a profile from SQL. I could have a profile from Oracle. I can have DB2, right? Now there may be some catches DB2, but you can still do it, right? But the point is I have all of them in my environment now, okay? So if I create another environment, let's say QA bikes, and this is only okay, and just be consistent, we'll call it products, okay? And now here, what I can do is, because it has to inherit from there, sorry. But what I was hoping was to get rid of this. But you get the concept, right? Oh, I see, because I have to have at least one. And now I can save. Okay, so now if I go here, so it's kind of tricky, and I do know there was a ticket open for that. So you notice because now I have an error there. There is a way to get around that. I don't remember what it is, but the concept would be I may want dev to have one and QA to have the other. Okay, but that's okay. We'll figure that out later. That's why I call this a working session and not a true client project, right, that I'm doing. But if I go back to here, I can still see that I have both of mine. Okay. We were talking about this not too long ago with a customer about this concept, because I can't delete it now either, so that's kind of tricky. Okay, so now that we got our environment, so let's go here. 3. Next up is set up your environment. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our model. Okay. Our model, if you think about like a data-driven model, you know, or anything like that in programming, basically a model is just a collaboration of data into a set of entities or an entity that allows you to work from. So instead of getting your whole production database, I can only get the pieces that I need. I can only get the tables I need. So if I go to modeling and I scroll down and I say get started, and notice my environment, so I'm cool with that. I can choose to create a new environment from here if I want to. Hit next. Now this scan, you got to be very careful. Okay, I'm going to do a basic, which is key relationships only, or I can do advanced, where it's cross data source column relationships, as you can read. It takes a little bit longer. So what I want to do is I want to start with basic. Now, one thing that's very important, if I say exclude, now that's very important. I can exclude databases from my profile, right? So, and I can also exclude tables, schemas. So, and you could say all and just type in and it tries to find it, right? So let's do a scan. All right. So that is successfully scanning. Shouldn't take long. But I wanted to leave it here just for a second because you can see it sees 36 tables. And what it's looking for is basic relationships. Now it's funny because I told it to skip orders, which is there, but if you notice when I click on it, there's no data, okay? So which means it did not scan that one, it does not see the tables, and believe me, there is tables there, so it just overlooked it. But if I go down to my bike shop, I have my tables here. Now I don't have relationships, but the cool thing is if you had relationships, they would show up over here. So if persons was linked to person API, then you would see that over here, which is really cool because it draws it out for you. I can also edit the relationships. If I want, let's see, primary tables API. Wait, let's go back. Let's say our primary table is person. Okay, I'm going to try to build one real quick, if that's okay. And then what I want it to do is business entity, because basically this is just a copy of this table. One is API, which means the data is coming from an API into this table. And this table is the one that I'm building with TDM. We'll talk about that. But let's say I want that to be a relationship. Done. Now you see it draws the relationships between the two, which is really cool. But let's go back and I want to remove that relationship because I want this to stay clean, and now it's gone. I can edit my aliases if I have an alias for that table or whatever. Let's see, I think it goes all the way down to a column level on this screen. If not, there's another one. Yeah, it does. So I can put an alias for the column. Now the other thing too is I can rescan data. So let's say if I had a new profile and I just want to rescan the data, I can click on that. It does the same thing. Scan for PII. I'm going to run through that quickly, but I'm going to save that until I get down to the audit edit screen. Okay, and then register data table. So if I need to add a new data table, I can do this and add it to it. Okay. But right now, let's just not do that. You have different views. Now, none of these are connected, unfortunately, but it tries to find what we'd call the driving table. This is really bad view. Problem is I tried to zoom in earlier and it looked very bad because I can't scan over there for some reason. You'll see that went away. But anyway, I can go details, and when I click on something, it gives me the details over here, which is really cool. Unfortunately, there's not much. If there was more information like relationships, I'd see that as well. I can edit the alias, which seems to be on every page. And then I can scan for PII. Now, with the PII, we'll come back to this again when we see it over here. Okay, we haven't scanned anything, so everything's green. I can run it from here, and it will look for it. But again, I want to discuss that over here. So that's it for your data modeling. Pretty simple. Now, there's a couple other things that was in GT Data Maker. And GT Data Maker is a thick client for those who don't know, but Mr. Todd Hall knows. There's other things you could do in your relationships, like I can scan by name, which is really cool. Like if I had the name ID in my columns, I can scan and that would show up. I haven't seen those features here, or at least not that I've come across yet. So, but anyway, so there's still some features in GT Data Maker that has not made it over to the portal yet, and I don't know if they ever will, be honest with you. That's kind of above my pay grade. All right, so let's move on. Next thing we have is find and reserve. Find and reserve to me is the replacement of test matching. Let's keep a record here. So I've got my model. Now we're going to run a find and reserve. Now the truth is you probably won't, like find and reserve has nothing to do with this path. In fact, to me, it's a huge where clause. You're going to build a where clause that the customer can run or your end user can run. Now again, it's got a data model. Now here in the data model, I can do what's called a legacy. I've done both, but if you have a clean one, I recommend running this one. One thing I found in the data model is now you can hear this a lot, but if the data types are not supported, so if you're using a data type in your database that's not supported with TDM, then some of these features won't work. And you're going to have to use an architect or an engineer or somebody like me or even CA support, which I still call that, Broadcom support, to figure out if that's the case. So let's create one here. We'll call it model. No, wait, we want to call this find people. Now, let's say I'm a developer, team lead, and I want a set of, and notice I'm missing here because we didn't do the find up there, but I'm looking for a list of maybe people, but I definitely have to have my ID. So that's there. Notice it's checked for primary ID. But all I want is a first name and a last name. Okay. Now, what's kind of cool is if you click on these and say edit, you have these options where I can change the column name. Let's just put a space in there to make it nice and neat. I can say available for search. So what this is going to give you is when you run this, you'll see it eventually. You'll get a list of data, okay? But I may not want to include, you know what, let's do that. Let's just add one for kicks and giggles. Let's say I want to add middle name. Okay, but middle name could be null. I don't know if I can change these orders. Let's try to redo it just to make sure, because I'm not sure I can change the order of the way it's produced. I try to keep first name, last name, middle name. But the trick with middle name is I don't want it as a search criteria, and therefore I don't want it to show down as a drop down. Now, I don't mind it saying middle name, that's fine, but some of it can be null. Now, first name, we'll go ahead and say, you know what, they can search for it, and I want it to populate the drop down. Now, the drop down can be kind of tricky. It wasn't working for me in some other videos, and I don't know if I'm going to post those videos or not, but what I realized is it's because, again, the data type was not supported, okay? But what I've got is I got a business ID, okay, and if I look, it's my primary key. You have to have at least one, Okay. And then these others are, as you can see, they are in the search criteria. Let's do this. That one's in the drop down, but let's say last name. I don't want it as a drop down, so you can see what that does. Okay, so now we're done. Let's finish. This is going to take a second. Okay, bada bing, bada boom. It's done. Now, display as a tester. What that means is when you create a tester user, then this will show up for them. Okay, we'll go ahead and leave that checked. And let's see what else. Yeah, that's fine. On demand, that's good. So data prefixing. Now, if you want to know what that is, we'll talk about that in a later video. This video is going to be long. We'll chop it up. So what I just want to get a high level. But what this did was it created my data model. If I go down to my self-service catalog, which is where all your things are, I can see it here, find people. Okay. So we'll come back to this when we get to it, because we're going to keep going down the list. But we did our find and reserve. Now we're going to go a totally different path. Okay. So this, say my data here is find. Okay. So now I want to do a create. Okay. Now this right here, believe it or not, would be part of profiling. Okay. So that kind of falls into the category of TDM, what it used to be. Now we did skip a step. We haven't got to it yet, which is PII. We'll get to that shortly. So with a create, what we're going to do is now we're going to make sure we create an object. Okay. So if I go down to my objects, notice I have none. I'm going to say register a new object. It's going to know, we're going to say give me a table, and I want to connect to the profile. The schema should be DBO, right? So it's Windows default schema. And again, we'll just stick with our good of classic person. Now I can do any of these, but we can do person. So let's do register. Okay. And now we're in data generation. Okay. I can click on create generator and it takes me right to it, but I'm going to wait till we get there. So, you know what? Let's don't. I was going to go down the list, but the problem is once I create the object, now it wants to generate, right? So let's go ahead, because our note says let's create. So that's what we're doing. Okay. We're creating. So create object. 7 create generator. Okay, so now what we're going to do is say new generator. We'll give it a name. Create people. This will create a set of people. Yeah, this will create a group of people. There we go. That just sounds better. All right, so it sees my object, so I'm going to click on it. Now, over here, I select, again, the object we created. Now, these little buttons here, I'll talk about those once we create it. So let's go ahead and add a row. Now, business ID. Now, I'm just going to fly through this. There's so much about data generation that I love. So this is a variable. This is if you're going to link back to another column. This is if you know the function. This is the data painter, which is one of my favorite tools, especially if you use GT Data Maker. That was very useful. Paste, this is cut, and I don't remember what this whole thing is. What is this? Oh, copy everything to the right. Okay, so those are your basic features. What I'm going to do is I know there's a next, so we're going to use next here. Whoops. And then person type, I don't remember what this is, so I'm just putting a name style. I don't remember what this is either, so we'll just put 0. And then title, we'll say, I can leave title blank. First name though, so here's where we're going to get caught up on ourselves. I could use function, but I'll go ahead and use data painter so you can see what it looks like. And here, I want to go down to the seed list. So that would be here. Now, the key to data generation is really just knowing these formulas. Don't expect you to know all of them. In fact, if you go to help, it has a list of what all these mean. So I'm looking for a seed list. Okay, so random list of value is what random stands for. And then here we just do first name, which is here. Okay, and percent 0. Oh, what was all this? So see, that's one bad thing too, is you can't really see. I used the wrong one because it uses all this, but that's fine. Let's get rid of all this. All I wanted was the basic, which is here. And let's make sure I got enough. At validate. Okay, so that's good. All right, so we're good there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. Even though it's got this cool little, ooh, where'd it go? Well, did it save my copy? Nope. Figures. Okay, so that's fine. We would just have to create it again. So let's go down. Let's find the one we needed. I don't need the one. Those are columns. I don't need the columns. That's one I need. Okay, now first name. Okay, that's all I need. And percent is 0. And here, control. Oh, so you can't do that. Well, that's just wacky. All right, so let's put one last time. Now that we know we can't copy and paste that way. That explains why it has the copy and paste feature. Okay, first, bada bing, bada boom. 0 nulls, we'll validate. And this time we'll save it before we lose it. Insert. Okay, now I bet you I can copy from here because this is just a data grid. Yes, okay. Middle name, I'm going to leave it blank. Last name, let me change this to last name. Okay, so that will work. No. So the cool thing about this GUID, there is a GUID ID. If you look at your data painter, and if you go down to, no, I'm sorry, it's in code. There is an option for, it's a GUID ID. Oh, wait, I'm on the right thing. No, I'm sorry, code. There it is. So that's really cool. But the fact that it's solid for that, it kind of picks it up anyway. So date modified, once you see date, that's fine. All right, so that is our data. So now we have our first row of data. So let's talk about these others. So if you remember, well, first of all, I can pick a different, I can look at related tables. We don't have any. So if I had one, I could bring it down, add it, and make sure that these match, right? And then add rows here. If you remember in DataMaker, you have the first row display. That's this one. That's very useful if I want to know the data types. And if I want to see some default values, I can use that. Most times you're just going to use the grid view. What's it called? Table display. All right, so select tables. You saw that. That gives you a pop out there. Actions, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Configuration will create a default configuration, which is very handy if you're doing self-service publishing, because you don't want people to come there and just create new configurations, right? I mean, it's pretty, that didn't make sense, but let's see, if you wanted a default configuration, let's say default. Now you can do this in the data maker by, I think it's right clicking on the project and going to properties. Or maybe it's right click on the data pool and go to the properties. I'd have to look at it. But let's say for an example, I want this to always publish to a file and I want CSV. Now I could choose something different. I could produce an XML if I wanted to, or maybe a JSON file. That's in the formatted text. It's kind of tricky, to be honest with you. I've never done it that way. I've always used Javelin. And I do have videos for Javelin as well. So, and my default count, I want 15. I want my options to be continue on errors. And then on duplication, I wanted to ignore them. And that's it. So that's a pretty good, decent default configuration. All right, so now let's go back to our, oops, I forgot to make it active. Don't know if I can hit the back button, so we'll go to configurations. We'll click on this. Notice it says active. Let's go ahead and make it active. Okay, now it should be what we can use it. Okay, but now let's go back to our create people. So actions, what are actions? Actions is if I want something to happen before or after my publish. Now, if you notice, I can publish table or publish or a table. Now, this is very useful if I want to run a Javelin file right before I publish. Now, what I can do there is I can say before publish, or create action. Okay, and I do have this in a video as well of how to make this work. Okay, because then I would go in here and select workflow. I don't have a workflow. Again, in the video, I'll show you how to upload it, but we'll talk about it when we get to it. And then my variables, which is pretty cool, I can use my published data as variables. And I talk about that in the video as well. Okay, wait for completion, and of course it's going to be a post because I want it to happen afterwards. And then if I save it, then that's pretty much how I do an action. The problem is I don't have a workflow, so not in this project. Okay, but that's how that works. And that would show up under post. Okay, all right, wait a minute. I'm sorry, I was talking about if I post it. So let's say I run a publish job. Once it's published, then I want it to run the workflow. Then it would be post. If I want the workflow to run before the publish, then it would be here. And it's not just workflow, right? So scripts, SQL, stuff like that. All right, so now what else we got? So, okay, so now if we look at the variables, we'll give it a variable name. Username works. Description tab does not work. Default value, we'll just say Tim. Scope, we'll make this on a project level. Okay, these little buttons aren't there. I'm not sure why, but that's okay for now, I guess. And supposedly when I click away, it saves it. Anyway, so that's your variable. So let's go back down. We were looking at data generators, right? And if I go here, I can go to variables here. Now this would be if I'm using a variable within this data generator, right? So user description. Oh, can't use user. A string, and it's going to be a text box where they can type it in. Default value is Tim. Okay, and then a help message would be your tooltip. Okay, make it optional, display, resolve. Okay, save. So that created a variable for me. Now, if I went back to my generator, I could then use the variable in here somewhere. Variables. Those are systems. What do we call the name? There we go. Okay, and we're good. Now, publish is exactly what it is. So let's go ahead and publish this one, but then we'll talk about how to make it where user can use it. Again, I'm going to publish to a file. So I keep right-clicking on my mouse. Let's see, we want to go to a CSV and repeat 15 times. This is kind of for testing purposes. And then the rest of it's fine. I could say skip on dupes and things like that because I don't care. It's going to a CSV. But don't really care about that either. So publish. Now that published to a job. Now we'll talk about the jobs in a little bit. They're down here. So you won't see it exactly right now, but we'll come back to it. But the one thing I do want to change on my generator. Now this is kind of misleading, and I think I did a video on this. If I didn't, I will. But even though I say available for self-service, it still doesn't show up. You still have to go create the backend on that. And it's really not hard. It's just using ARD, Agile Designer. And it's really just using 3 tabs. A start, I think it's called a task, maybe. I'll have to look at it. And then an end, but in your task, you would say use this publish job, and it picks it for you. And that's pretty much it. So what did I miss? Oh, PII. So now let's go ahead and look at PII. Now, data masking we can't do. I'll do a later video on that. For some reason, it doesn't seem my fast data maker. So we'll come back to that. So we're skipping that. So we'll say no go on data masking. Okay. Now, PII. I get a lot of questions about PII, and it's really not as hard as it sounds. First thing we do is going to set it up. I'm going to do bike shops. Now, I have to create these classifiers. Now, a classifier is how do I tell the engine what to look for in the database. So if I create a custom, let's say I have a top secret car, and anytime that car shows up in the database, I want to know about it. So that's my rule, okay? So you would import your rules down here in configuration inside, give me one second, classifiers, okay? So now what they are, they're JSON. Usually it's either JSON or it's just some kind of regex, and you would drop it in and it will pick it up. Now these are ones that I had to put in. There are some that are default. I think you have to rename the zip and then you have to add it. So if you don't see any to begin with, it's just because they're not added, okay? But there are some there. So let's go back to where we were. We were here. That's the reason you see these here. So I got to pick my table. For some reason I lost it. Now I can say just do an environment, which is dev in this case. Okay, so let's just do dev. Next, and that would give us both tables. Now, what percentage? Well, first of all, scan column names only. Scan column names and data. So I want to know the data as well. So that takes a little bit longer, but it's checking for everything, right? So the next one is the level of percentage of your data that matches. I'm just going to do this basic right now. Okay, so then the match number of rows, this is kind of cool. So I can say only match the first 1,000, right? So that'd be kind of query. But this is kind of cool too. I can also store the match samples so then I can see them. So let's go ahead and go. Same thing, scan all tables, include, exclude, right? So I can exclude certain tables. I don't really care. I just want it to be maxed. And so we're going to do it now. Okay, so that's running. Now we'll come back to it. What it will do, it allows you to view it. And we'll get to that when it comes back. And then you sign off and say, yes, I agree or disagree. And then it becomes a report. Now I can't do sign-offs because I can't connect to an Exchange server. I don't think I have one. And of course that's down here. So I'll tell you what we're going to do is, while that's running, I don't want to talk about this stuff till it gets done. Well, okay, orchestration. Orchestration is workflows. Okay, that's pretty much all it is. And then once you have a workflow, you can have a service flow that you can use. And I apologize, you may hear a thunderstorm in the background. There's nothing I can do about that. So once you have your service flows, then you can use those. But again, you mainly use those like in post or pre. And I did some videos on those. So I did videos on how to do workflows, how to build a workflow in Javelin, and then how to publish it to the portal. So watch those, and it gives you really good details. Now, my clones is actually part of the VTDM. Now, I'm not going to set up the VTM, which is a virtual test data management, just because you have to have another environment. And I may set that up later. 2 sets of videos I'm thinking about doing is mainframe, but I don't really have a mainframe, so I got to figure out how to virtualize that. And then the other thing too is I may set up the VTDM, just so people can see how that works. Now, when you go down to our configuration, again, as an admin, this is the options you get. Most people probably won't get this straight out, but you get your profiles, your access, which is users, pretty common sense, and then it groups, pretty common sense for those who've been in IT world for a long time. I know Mr. Todd Hall has. ALM credentials, I'm not using ALM, so it's going to be mail server. We're not using a mail server, so that's kind of here now. I think I probably could figure that one out because I think we do have one, but that's okay. Dev test for CA dev test or Broadcom dev test. I love dev test, but this would be the connection for it. Authentication, I'm using native TDM, or I can use LDAP, pretty common sense. Classifiers, that goes back to your PII. Remember we talked about that, drag and drop it over and it picks it up. License detail, this is my license that I'm using. For some reason they have my group wrong, but that's okay. I'm with A&I Solutions, not Citigroup. And then telemetry has to do with your enterprise type stuff. So enterprise.id. I'm gonna be honest with you, I have no idea what this does. Let's see. Oh, I mean, open up Visual Studio. I could open it up in. Oh, I guess we already lost it. But let's see. It's because I might have clicked on it twice. But I was going to try to open up in Notepad++. Let's look. Ooh, that's ugly. So we can do this. We can do this. And we can say JSON. Let's go JSON formatter. This is not the one I usually use. Let's see. Let's go. Which one I usually use? This one? Yeah, this one I usually use. Okay. So beautify. So I guess this is just my company information. Anyway, we could do a video on that later because I'm not really that concerned what that is. So let's go ahead and close this. I'm sure I can go to help me tell me exactly what that is. But the point is there's your configuration settings. VTM is a virtual test data manager. My clones would be when you're cloning from VTM. Okay. Your current clones are shown. Yeah, it doesn't say. So these guys we're going to get back to in a second. How we're doing on our scan job. Okay, is it complete yet? So, yep, it's completed. So now if I click on this, I can see that my scan job is complete. So now it's ready for view, which is the next step. So we're going to click on this. Now remember our heat map earlier, so this kind of shows me how much we've got in each one of these. So I can say persons, orders. Notice it gives me the information here. Now, if I would say don't give me max data, don't give me data, and there's a couple other options, it looks totally different. So what you'd see is each table, and the table will tell you what it's matching on. But here it tells me there's 53 rows, and the little tags is what it's matching on. Okay, you see that? So what we're going to do is, like, for example, this is only found country, which is considers PII. There's no PII up through there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these. Okay. Miss these. Don't need that one. Now, you wouldn't do it as fast as I'm doing it. You would actually take one at a time and work it and figure out. So I'm going to say confirm. Okay, so now everything is confirmed. Oh, I guess I do have to do the, I didn't think I'd do the greens as well, but let's go ahead and do them. I guess I do just because it's saying, hey, we looked at it. Please say this is valid. Okay. And confirmed. Okay. I'm missing one. Okay, now once everything is confirmed, that one was being tricky, so I had to stop. What I had to do was uncheck everything and then just recheck everything, and it worked. Okay, so again, my actions here, whoops. I could download this as a CSV, which is kind of cool, or I could remove unmatched samples, but I don't want to do that. What I want to do is create a report. Now I can download the report, and here's where it gets kind of tricky. Well, let me show you the report first. So the report will show you everything it found, where it found it, details about each column, that stuff. It's kind of cool, actually. So then you can take this and you can work it or do whatever you need to make sure that, like, here's all the data that I found that matches. Remember I said grab the data? So that's all there. So now the next thing to do is submit it for sign off. Now I can't do that because I don't have an email. Okay. So anyway, what it's telling me is that those are the users that we have here: myself, my boss John, Sasha, and Todd. But it doesn't have. All right. So what I was saying is there's no email. So what happened is at that point they would email it to them, that would sign off, and then it would become a report. It won't become a report until it's approved and signed off. Okay, so that's got our PII. Let's see where we are in our list. So we walked through PII, so we're good. Just for kicks and giggles, we'll put a number on there. Work this. You saw how you set it up, you scan, it becomes a job. The job requests are always there, so you can go back and click on another one. You can have as many as you want. And then again, ready for review. Unfortunately, I don't have anything, again, because I don't have a person. We don't have an email exchange. So we talk about data generation, we talk about workflows. Now, the most important is once everything's done, when a user is signed in, the main thing they would have is a service catalog. Now, you're not going to see anything here besides our find and reserves. Okay, so if you remember for our find and reserve, this is where I was talking about. So here in the search field, it will bring back the drop down because I told it to, remember? Last name, I said don't bring back down a drop down, so it doesn't. And the ID, it's numeric, but one thing I like is it gives you these conditions automatically: equal to, greater than, or less than. So for example, I could say anything greater or less than 5, okay? And notice it starts with 5, which is really cool. Now notice here the middle name is part of my data, but it's not part of my search. So what I'm going to do is we're going to save this by selecting everything, and I'm going to add it to my reserve. And I'm going to go ahead and say complete. And we'll say, yeah, it's asked me what I want to name it. The name's fine. So let's reserve it. So now we have a reserve. Again, that was created by your self-service catalog. Now, most importantly, notice your data generation tab isn't here. And I'll show you a project in a few minutes with there. That's because we didn't build the ARD backend. And like I said, I'll do a video for that if I didn't already, just to show you how it's done. It's very simple. But just because you check that one checkbox that says display on self-service catalog or whatever it says, just because it's checked doesn't mean it's going to show up. And hopefully that's something they'll fix in the future. Submit a request. Now this is again where the request that we submitted, so it's our generator there. It's here. Okay, I can click on it. can open it up. Here's my log for the data generation, and here's my data. Okay, and that's, I should have all 15, and I do. So, and that's our data generated that we generated. If you remember that we did that, that should be dates. Okay, so we're good. Oh, that's because it's our variable. I was like, what's the Tim for all my titles? But it's because we made it the variable. We didn't change the variable. Okay, and then, so that's not important. It's just kind of funny. And then, what else are we looking at? Go away. So, and then if I look at my PII, here's my published job for that. So a lot of your things, if you're debugging or if you just want to verify, go to submit a request and see if it has an error or see if it went through. We shouldn't have anything else that we submitted. Now masking, again, we can't do masking because it's not seeing the fast data masker, which it's installed on the server, but it's probably not installed in the default, so it doesn't see that. So I'll work through that and probably do a video for that. Now on the find and reserve, we just created the reserve from the self-service. Here it is. As a developer, I can come in here and say, you know what, I need this data. I have 100. So let's go ahead and click on this. And then I can open it up. And here's some users that I now can go write code against. Okay, and if I do the count, we should have 100. Well, 104. Okay, well, close enough, right? Go away. So what that does is I, as a developer, can go to data generation, so self-service catalog, and not data generation, I'm sorry, find and reserve. I'm trying to talk fast because I'm trying to get to this. And I can relate what data I need. Let's say I'm writing code and I only need code for, is there any Tims in here? No, there's a tier. Okay, let's say I only want to write code for Taylor. Okay, so if I do the find, oh, that's kind of odd. Remember, sometimes if you get errors, a lot of times that has to do with the data type is not valid, but I thought I fixed that. So I do H, nope, probably to be exact. So let's do this. Okay, so I found a lot of those in the last names. Okay, so that's cool. So let's say I'm only writing code for this person. Okay, and I can save this. Now, once you save it, I would be the team lead or the team tester. Now, my developers or my testers can just come here and get the data all day long. Okay, so it's kind of the answer to test matching, if you remember, anybody knows what that is. Now I do have videos on that. I'm not sure if I'll post those just because it's a little bit old school, but the concept is I get a group of data now that I can use. Now test matching is a little bit different. I don't want to get into that now, but I looked at my data to see what matched on certain criteria. Now, so again, we talked about clones, submit a request, we talked about self-service catalog, and then self-service workflows. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump projects here, and we're going to go to the bike shop. I'm going to look at this one real quick. Now, notice here I have generate bikes, publish people, a list of products, list of people, and list of IDs. So this kind of makes more sense. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to generate some bikes. Okay, so I have a test database that I'm working against. I need some fresh data. I'm just going to go in here and automatically, a couple clicks, I am now generating 100 bikes in the database. So we'll let that run. We'll come back to this and see. You can also click on these IDs 142 in some places and jump right to it, which is pretty cool. I should be able to see that I have workflow. No, okay, it's a different project. That's okay. So let's go into our self-service catalog. And now I need a list of IDs. They got to be valid IDs. They need to be realistic. I'll just take all of them. Notice I can modify by date, right? But you know what? This is a good set of IDs. What I'm looking for are these GUID IDs. I could request this, or what I could go down here and see if somebody's already created one for me. And I do right here. So I don't have to go create those. And that works for me. So what I'll do is go back to here. Sorry, let's go back one. Let's go to here. And then, I'm sorry, I missed this button, and download it. That's the button I was looking for. So now that it's downloaded, now I have a list of IDs. that I can now work from as a developer or QA or whoever. But the point is, these are a list of valid IDs in the database. So in a way, it's almost like doing a subset. I know I keep talking about like, is this, is that, or that, but it's like a massive where clause and a subset of data put together. Now, this release, I can come in here and release these. Now, to let you know, they don't release right away. It goes through a cycle, and it takes probably about, I think, a couple of days. But it will say here, invalid, or anyway, to give you an idea that it's not there anymore. So anyway, so I hope this is useful. Oh, let's go back and look at our, where's our, we're looking for submitted requests. And we need to go to generators. It would have been this one. It says it's complete, but I don't have data on it yet. No, that's not what I wanted. Publish, complete. Okay, so this is it. So I'm not sure what this deleted one is, but that's okay. But if I go here and click on this, open this, it shows me my log. And as you can see, I'm not sure if this is the right one, but you get a concept. No, it's the wrong date. But you can see that it published 100 jobs. So why isn't my job showing up? Did I click around too much? I'm trying to fly through this video, which means I'm going to make mistakes. I thought the ID was like 140 something. Oh, self-service catalog. I'm sorry. This is one we need. So it's this one. And if I go here, publish, click on. Now I can see that my published job 143, this timestamp, which is correct. Here's my 611. And then it published 100 rows to that table. Anyway, so I hope all this was helpful. It's just a quick run through of the portal. The backend again is pretty close to the same backends we all know from GT Data Maker. Once you start using this, it kind of makes a lot of sense. But if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Again, hope this is useful.